Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? I hope everybody's at least somewhat partially here. I know I'm late, and I apologize. Little bit on that while we sort of maybe wait for people to roll in. I know that George is doing his first live stream, and I definitely encourage everybody to go over there after this. This is going to be short, simple, and sweet. Going to go about 30 minutes. First 10, we'll sort of talk about stuff that happened, and between the previews and the trailer. So we'll keep it spoiler free for the first 10 minutes or so. And then that way people can kind of bolt. But if we're going to get down to the meat and potatoes of this, I'm going to be, like you said, 100% honest. I am a huge Tom Hardy fan. Very there's very few things of Tom Hardy that I have not seen multiple times. I will just put it that way. And I was really, really, really looking forward to this. And I guess if I had to sum this up in one word, I would sum it up in, I guess, you know what? Let's see who's here, and then I'll tell you what word I will pick. So Legatus Legionus, I see 4 lights. Yes, 4 lights. We're all here. There's only 4. We're not gonna, I guess, give in to anything. We might get, I'm gonna try something here. We'll see how it goes. But we're gonna have this going in the background. And if we get struck, I guess we get struck. But I don't see why we would. There's no sound. This is their official trailer. So we'll just have that going. As you can see from the trailer, there was a lot of potential. So yeah. Let's see. Experiment 626, Boop Bop Beep. Hi there, Raj Williams. You summon 84. How's it going? I hope the truckin' is treating you well. Citizen Sinister, Wicked Steel, Andrew Matthews. Hello, Corey Cochran, Krish Persia. How are you? Always a delight and a pleasure to see you. Indeed, indeed, indeed. I'm so happy and thankful and grateful that you guys have stopped by. Anonymous, hey there. Bastard, how's it going? I was not late. Like 17 seconds into 9:31. Y'all are vicious, I tell you what. But anyway, so what brings us all here? It's kind of, I'm gonna buffer. Oh, that's nice. All right. Well, maybe we'll just do stills. Okay. Let me try that again. Okay. I don't know what's going on. I'll try and keep y'all entertained as much as possible. So, here's the thing. The imagery in this film, like you just saw right there, was a bit on the nose. That's for sure. We can talk about the stuff that's in the trailer first, I guess, but the one word, if I had to pick it, it would be disappointed. I really, really was just disappointed. There was so much opportunity here, and there was so much that could be done. So, without any big spoilers, gosh, it's really not a Venom story. It's not a Carnage story. I don't know what they were trying to do. The best way I could describe this movie is like they took 4 different movies and clipped it and then super glued it together. Um, it's not it wasn't enjoyable, it didn't make any sense. There's it the comedy, some of the jokes definitely landed. You know, it's that Venom comedy, it's that hilarity. Um, but you know how earlier in the week Bounding did that article. I covered it on Tuesday. We did a live stream. It was a little less than an hour. Did a live stream on Tuesday covering it. The scene that they're referring to, and I'm not ruining anything here. This was something we already covered on Tuesday. They talk about how Venom goes to like a rave. And he does. He goes to a rave. It's like a costume party. And it didn't make any sense. It didn't belong in the film. There was no need for it. I'm going to be 100% truthful. They completely undid any and all character development of Eddie, of Venom, and of the two of them from the first film. My spoiler-free suggestion is simply rewatch the first Venom, because that was about a third of this movie, was Eddie and Venom figuring out how to work together, was Eddie and Venom figuring out how to be symbiotic, was Eddie and Venom figuring out how not to fight each other. If you recall the first movie even just a little bit, that is basically the plot of the first movie. Eddie is trying to come to terms with what exactly it is that is inside of him, what exactly it is that he's carrying, what's going to happen, how is he going to make this work, how are any of them going to make this work, like, can he live this way, and can he live with himself? And at the end of the first film, they say, "We are Venom." So those questions had already been answered. They had already figured each other out. They had already worked together. They had already made that leap. This film should have been the two of them, you know, almost, honest to God, almost like Clark Kent and Superman. And here's why. Eddie's a journalist. So he should be going out and finding stories of robbers, of murderers, of, you know, the worst of the worst. And when the cops can't do anything about it, when the cops can't solve it or they can't figure it out or what have you, Venom steps in. Venom is extreme, you know, they make a reference to it at the mid-credit scene, and yes, there is a mid-credit scene. And it's not worth, I'll tell you what it is in a few minutes. It's not worth going to see it for the mid-credit scene. But Venom says, if I showed you, you know, these 80 million light years of experiences and knowledge, your tiny little brain would explode. And that's true. So Venom has all of this experience. He has all of this power. He's not weak. They make him weak. In this entire film, they make him weak. And they're fighting, they're bickering, they're fighting. It's like watching I don't even know, it's not even siblings, and it's not a married couple. And quite frankly, like in the film, in in one of the scenes in the apartment scene that Serkis alluded to in the Bounding article, uh they it's basically like Eddie calls it an abusive relationship. That's not what they are. This was already settled in the first film. So they spent a third of this movie basically retconning, redefining, and reshuffling the first film. And I have no idea why. Um then you had Cletus's story, which was way better in the animated Spider-Man. Like, they did. I'm not sure how you make Cletus weak, but they did. Like, Cletus was. It was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for Cletus. He is a bloodthirsty, murdering psychopath, right? He has his one shining light, but he is otherwise, he's evil. Doesn't matter which way you slice it, dice it, wrap it in a bow. Cletus is evil. And, it pains me to say this, but they make him a crybaby. They make Cletus a crybaby. Now, you can tell this is a PG-13 movie. There is the only blood that you actually see in this film is when Cletus bites Eddie's hand, and there's like a drop of blood on Cletus's chin. That is the only blood you actually see in this film. Screech gets shot in the head, and you see no blood. Carnage eats heads. Venom eats heads. No blood. This is honest to God, this could have been a PG film with what like if this was the 90s, this would be a PG film. I don't know, like they made Cletus a crybaby. They made Venom a cuck. They made Eddie pathetic again. And Carnage was barely in this story. Like, actual Carnage was barely in this story. In the first film, it made sense for Eddie to have self-doubt and to be confused and to have questions. This is the second film. It should be Eddie and Venom being this force, like even in here they cracked like lethal protectors, and he's like, that's so 90s. But like it fits because that's what Venom is like in this iteration, that's what Venom is supposed to be. And there's really no coming back from it. Like they miss the cheesy points. There is no blood, with the exception of the drip of blood on Cletus's chin after he bites Eddie's hand. Venom is a romantic. Like, I believe Serkis even alluded to that in the article. He's like, we love Anne. She should be with like this, that, and the other. And that's the other thing. Anne had no rhyme. There's no reason Anne should be in this story. If they were not going to pick up from where they left off in the first film, they should have just let it go. And Anne should not have been here. She shouldn't have. There's no reason for her to be in here except for a plot contrivancy. Now, I know I said I was going to do no spoilers for the first 10 minutes. I think we've been going about 8, maybe. It's been about 10 minutes. About 15, actually. So I kept my promise. So, all right. Anne's whole purpose in this is literally to be kidnapped. That's it. Like that's the whole thing. She if we go to the beginning of the film, Eddie and Venom are having a disagreement because Venom is restless because Eddie won't let him out. You find out that Venom hasn't been able to eat bad guys. He's not getting the nutrients he needs from the brains. Chocolate is not really doing its thing anymore. It's not sating him. He doesn't just want the nutrients. He wants to go kill the bad guys. Eddie's not letting him do it. They have 2 chickens. I kid you not. They're Venom's chickens. They're called Sonny and Cher, who he refuses to kill. I can't remember if Sonny and Cher are in the first film or not. So you've got 2 chickens. Their names are Sonny and Cher. Venom won't eat them. And Eddie's like, if you want brains, you can eat the chickens. And he's like, chickens have tiny brains. And that's what Venom says. And Eddie's like, well, there's nothing I can do. So they have this back and forth in the apartment. And then they go see Cletus in his cell for the first time, right? And Cletus has been moved to like this central cell with bars because his normal cell is like what you would is like a padded cell almost with the door that seals. So Cletus is sitting in this open bar cell, and they Venom and Eddie show up to interview him because he's asked for Eddie. And Detective Mulligan is like, "Why does he want you?" And Eddie's like, "I have no idea." So Eddie goes, and Cletus gives them a riddle to print, and his intention is for Screech to see it, Francesca, and she's the one that you see in this trailer, obviously, like screeching, and that's her right there. And his intention is, of course, for her to see it because it's like his goodbye to her, because he's trapped. I don't know if it's they don't really allude much more on that riddle other than it was a way to communicate with her, And oh Lord. So they're walking out and Venom is like, "Look, Eddie, look." And so Eddie turns his head and he looks into the cell um and at Cletus's cell, and he just happens to see everything on the wall that he needs to solve where Cletus hid all of his bodies. And Venom gets home, and of course, from memory, he like draws it all out for Eddie, and then they figure out, oh, here's where all the bodies are buried. We don't need Cletus anymore. Cletus gets the death sentence, and he's really pissed because Eddie didn't write his story the way he wanted it to be written and everything like that. So Cletus is on death row, and that cell that you just saw him in where he bit Eddie's hand is right before he goes into the execution chamber. And he starts insult. So the way that they get Cletus to bite Eddie is Cletus is like, "We're the same," and Eddie's like, "No, we're not." And he's like, "That's why you lied to that little fiance of yours," which they never explain how he knows any of this. Because it's not like he's got internet access or anything. He's like, "And that's why your daddy, no matter what you did, this, that, or the other." And you're like, okay. And so like Venom is the one that actually starts getting worked up. Like Eddie is losing his chill, but Venom is the one who actually like is like, "All right, that's enough. Don't talk to my friend like that." And so he comes like out of Eddie's chest, grabs Cletus, throws him around the cell a little bit. And so, of course, Eddie's up against the bars. The security guard can't see anything because he's directly behind Eddie, so he doesn't see the giant black goo coming out of his chest. And flinging Cletus all around Cletus's cell. Well, Venom drops Cletus. Cletus jumps up, bites Eddie's hand, and his line is, "I've tasted blood before, and that ain't it." Eddie Brock's got a big secret, and then he like wipes the blood off his chin, looks at it, it's doing that, symbiote venom thing, and he eats it, right? So Cletus eats the blood. That's how they contrived this whole thing, was that, Cletus wanted to have his say. He was talking about all of these different things that are like dead giveaways about who he cares about and where she would be and what they would do if the two of them ever broke out. Basically just like lays everything out exposition wise on a recorder. And Venom's like, "You don't need the recorder, my memory is excellent." But Eddie puts it down anyway, and Venom's like, "Insulting." So, yeah, see you right there. Boom. Bites his hand. And at this point, Eddie is back on top because he helped find Cletus's bodies. Well, Detective Mulligan is not happy about this because he's like, "I told you to tell me if there was anything." Eddie didn't. And so, of course, later in the movie, Mulligan is a dick to Eddie because he's like, "Information is like gold," or something like that. "You should know that." Well, regardless, go ahead. And so Eddie can't get out of Mulligan what he's looking for. And freaking Eddie and Venom go back to the apartment, and they do have like an actual fight. And I kid you not, Eddie's like, "This is abuse. This is abuse." And Venom's like trying to make up for the fact that Cletus bit his hand. and Anne dumped him again, even though they had already apparently broken up, and she's now engaged to Dan. So Venom's like, I can't heal a broken. He's like, emotional pain isn't something that I can really heal. It cuts much deeper than physical. And so he's trying to make Eddie breakfast and like trying to be nice. And it's yeah, they get into like Eddie is like, all you do is ruin my life, and Venom is like, who figured out the clue that brought you back on top? Who figured everything out? Why do we have the life that we have? Why do you get all the nice things that you have? It's because of me. I'm the hero. So you're back to Venom being obsessed with being this hero again, or this dark protector. And you have Eddie, who is back to being, right there where Eddie gets thrown to the floor. He's like, this is abuse. So, like, they're saying that it's an abusive relationship. Like, they're actually, like, it's literal dialogue that this is abuse. This is abusive. And, like, Eddie is not taking this like a man. He's not, like, they're having a disagreement. Venom is obviously much more physical. I mean, he's an alien symbiote, for the love of God. The two of them go at it. Venom kicks Eddie out, but it's Eddie's apartment. So Venom leaves after like throwing everything out the window. And then trashes Eddie's bike. Now Venom is jumping from host to host because he can't keep any of them alive long enough to like sustain him. So Venom is out and about, and Eddie is like, yep. No, like he sits down on his couch. He's gonna watch his TV. Everything is just dandy. Venom goes to a rave. This was what. Here it is. Here's the whole big thing. He goes to a rave, and the first thing he says, look at all these weird people. I love it. And then later on, they, no kidding, have Venom in freaking, those snap glow bracelets and necklaces? Yep. They've got him wearing them, and everybody's like, great costume. I love your costume. And he's like, oh, thanks. And this, that, and the other. One lady's like, come here. I love you. My type. And, and so Venom's like walking around this rave, not really doing anything. It cuts away from the rave and it comes back, and he's got more glowy necklaces. And then he goes up to the DJ and he takes the microphone. Now remember, everybody thinks that Venom is in costume. They are not aware that they're looking at an actual alien. And he's like, look at it, like they said that Eddie was wrong. He tried to hide me, this, that, and the other. And he's like, but here I am, and you all love me. And we have to stop hating each other. And I'm like, what? Oh, I forget. when he's walking into the rave, he says, I'm out of the Eddie closet. That's literally how the line is said. And then he's up on stage taking the DJ's mic, talking about how we need to, not be so hateful towards aliens, and we can all live on this rock together. And I was like, this has no purpose in the movie whatsoever. It doesn't need to be here. It's disjointed. It's inauthentic. It's pure pandering. There's no reason for it to be here. And to top it all off, it's not even Eddie and Venom when Eddie and Venom are up there talking. Venom has taken over a random and is up there saying all of this. And then when he gets done, because he's exhausted the energy of this random, he's like, oh, I wish you could have seen me tonight, Eddie. And like he's passing out in the freaking alleyway. So then he goes to Mrs. Chen's store, Venom does, and is like, I need chocolate. Like, I can't keep him up. I need food. And so Mrs. Chen is like, oh, Venom. And he's like, she's literally cradling the random guy that's dying because Venom is sucking the energy out of him. and Venom. And she's like cradling him in the middle of the store. She's like, I guess, the maternal image or reference in the story. It's very bizarre. Meanwhile, Cletus is getting ready to be executed. Well, they stick the needles in his arm. They get the first 2 drugs pumped in. And then all of a sudden, his blood comes back out of the IV and is stopping the rest of the chemicals from coming in. That's not how it would work, by the way, but we'll just blow past that. And he transforms into Carnage. And he eats everybody and destroys the prison and busts out of prison. But again, you see no blood. You don't really see any carnage. Like, they try really hard. There's a point where Carnage makes a tornado. It also does not make very much sense, the rhyme or reason behind it. But Carnage busts out and he's killing all the guards, and he goes straight for the warden because is like, any last words? Because the warden asks him, "Are those your final words to Cletus?" And it's the warden doing his job. Cletus is a bad man. He's a murderer. He's a horrible, horrible human being, right? And so the parallel there doesn't really pay off, because it's one thing when your protagonist is told something by your antagonist and then later on can throw it back in their face. But we're talking a matter of probably 90 seconds is when Cletus / Carnage throws the any last words line back at the warden. And then Eddie's watching on his TV. Now remember, Eddie and Venom are broken up at this point. Eddie's watching on his TV. He sees that Cletus has escaped. Mulligan shows up to his apartment, and he's like, "How is it that every time you seem to be at the middle of everything, but you know nothing?" And Eddie's like, "I'm lucky, I guess." And Mulligan's like, "Yeah, I doubt it." So that's when Mulligan is a dick and won't share it, because Eddie's like, "You said that they were talking about monsters. What did you mean?" And of course, Mulligan is a dick back to him because Eddie broke the story and made Eddie's career, but basically left Mulligan out in the cold. Well, you find out that Mulligan is the one that shot Screech in the face, and she didn't die. I wasn't aware that supersonic screaming and makes you immortal, but apparently you can take a bullet to the eyeball and not die when you've got supersonic screams. And so Eddie is like, "Hey, this is what he told me the last time we spoke. I have it on the recorder. We're at St. Estes. I think this means something." He's like, "No, I shot her in the face. It can't be that, right?" And of course, it's her. Without really any trouble whatsoever, Carnage hacks into the internet and finds her, even though she's been buried and hidden for like 30 some odd years or something. Hacks into the internet, finds exactly what he needs. "Oh, you're at Ravencroft. You are alive. Okay, I'm coming, my sweet." Well, then of course, like, with no, like, that's it. That's all the effort that's put in. They go and they rescue Screech. And they kill the psychiatrist and everybody there. And that whole scene, basically what happens in this film, Carnage is like the most powerful, ruthless creation on Earth. And he's helping Cletus run errands, go find Cletus's girlfriend and go burn down St. Estes, which is the home for unwanted kids that Cletus and Screech grew up in, and were, treated very badly, abused and whatnot. So they rescue Screech. They have this little romantic scene. They break out. The cops show up. They're in a 66 Mustang. This made no sense to me, because when she gets taken, like, you assume that they have been locked up in there since they were very young children. And she has then been in this other Ravencroft place, that cell that you saw, that glass cell, that's like triple insulated, so she can't scream her way out of it. And somehow she's like, 66 Mustang, my favorite. And he's like, I remembered. Like, how are they even gonna know? How are you even gonna know what that is? That's like, it's just thrown in there, to, I guess, try and come off as like romantic or something. It's super, again, disjointed and makes no sense. And not only is the 66 Mustang her favorite car, she can drive it like a freaking stunt car driver. She is phenomenal behind that wheel. There's just no way. There's no way she would have had the time to become that good and then retained that skill for all those decades. Like, it's just not a thing. It would not have happened. So they break her out. She, of course, the cops show up. She screeches. Carnage is like, no. And Cletus is like, you're going to kill him. He's super sensitive to sound. Carnage is like, if she does that again, I'm going to eat her. Like, I'll eat her. And they take off in their Mustang, right? So they've now checklist. They've gone and they've saved Screech. Now Screech and Cletus go and burn down St. Estes. And as St. Estes is burning, they're standing up on a hill and they're like, they're talking about the wedding on the chapel on the hill. And Carnage is like, 3 guests. And then you've who shot me? Cletus is like, Eddie Brock. And then Carnage is like, and Venom. A red wedding. And I'm like, are you serious right now? So then they go to try and get Eddie. Eddie's not at his apartment, but Mulligan shows up at Eddie's apartment looking for him because all of the crap, like all the crap that went down at St. Estes and all the crap that went down at Ravencroft and everything that's happening. So Mulligan shows up looking for Eddie. Carnage and Cletus are there. They're like, oh, Screech would be so happy. So they kidnap Mulligan, which is who Screech wants. Well, Screech looks around Eddie's apartment for all of like 5 seconds, finds a picture of Anne, and she's like, the perfect bait. And I'm like, how do you know that? So they go to Anne's apartment. Anne and Dan are like packing and about to leave town, right? So Screech shows up, kidnaps Anne, tells Dan to tell Eddie where to find them and that they'll make a trade. And they're like, okay. Now, we've blown through about 75% of the movie at this point, just an FYI. There's... So, we get to the wedding scene, the church scene. And oh my god. They show up, and it's Cletus and Screech. They're standing up at the altar in front of a Catholic priest. They're in a Catholic cathedral. And they're standing up there, and the priest is getting ready to do his thing. And so then Eddie and Venom walk through the door. And Eddie, it's Venom. It's Venom all venomed out. Well, then they see him, and so Carnage comes out of Cletus. And then Venom is like, oh, it's a red one. That's not good. We need, so then Venom hides inside of Eddie. Like, he disappears. And then instead of Carnage simply biting Eddie's head off, Carnage goes back inside of Cletus. And there's this really weird, like, back and forth between the two. And Cletus is like, Eddie, up here. And he's like beckoning him to where they're at. And Eddie is like, he has to bribe Venom. And Venom is like, no, I don't want to come out. And Eddie's like, I need you to come out. And Venom's like, no. And Eddie's like, I'll let you eat everyone if you come out, except for him. And he points at the priest, right? And Eddie's like, you can't eat him, but you can eat everybody else. And Venom's like, promise? And Eddie's like, promise. So Venom comes back out, and then Carnage comes back out. And Carnage is like, it's time to die, father. And then the priest is like, no. And then Carnage is like, not you, father. And then he points back at Venom and he's like, you, father. And I'm like, I think that was supposed to be funny. It didn't land. And oh gosh, I'm trying to think. Like that if I could have timed it on my phone, I think the Venom and Carnage. This is, by the way, we're now 80% of the way through the movie. This is the first time Venom and Carnage are actually meeting, and their fight is intermixed with Cletus sharing his feelings with Eddie, talking about how you only shared one side of the story. You didn't mention how I was beaten by my mommy and my daddy and my granny. Because earlier in the story, he talks about how he pushed his granny down the stairs and he dropped the blow dryer in the bathtub with mommy, and how he got beat by his dad. And like, it's just, he's basically complaining to Eddie about Eddie's article and how he didn't share Cletus' side of the story. That's literally what the fight between Venom and Carnage is interlaced with those scenes, because you have the cathedral bells ringing. And so, it knocks Venom and Carnage back into Eddie and Cletus. So they're talking about feelings. And Cletus is he's like, I did these things and I did those things because I was beaten and I was abused. And then I went to that hellhole and I only had one bright, shining light. Meanwhile, Screech is fighting Mulligan and pokes him in the eye, then wraps a chain around his neck, lifts him up in the air, and then drops him onto a horizontal pole. That dude's neck should be broken and his back should be broken. Keep this in mind. So now Mulligan is out of the picture. Dan shows up, and Anne is still locked in this coffin, right? Hog-tied and in a coffin. Huh. Oh, Lord in heaven. Screech tries to help, and of course screeches, and Carnage is like, I'll shut her up for good, and then basically suffocates Screech, but not to death, just unconscious. So now Eddie and Venom are facing Carnage, who has pulled Anne out of the coffin. They're up on around the steeples on but they're on the outside of the church, and Carnage climbs up to the top, jumps down on, Venom climbs up to the top, jumps down on Carnage, and pulls Anne out, and then Carnage kicks him through the window. Venom protects Anne, and then slowly lowers her down into Dan's arms, in the cathedral, and as he's getting repeated, that scene right there where you just saw Carnage doing that's Carnage is literally piercing Venom as he's slowly lowering Anne down to Dan. Oh. And Eddie's like, we need fire, and Venom's like, or sound. So Venom pushes Anne, pushes Screech. Screech lets out a wail as she's falling to her death, and she's trying to grab for fabric and everything. And she shatters the cathedral, the windows, all of it. And so Venom and Carnage are falling. They're expelled from Eddie and Cletus's bodies. Venom manages to go through Dan, down to Anne, reach out, grab Eddie before he falls, transforms back into Eddie, tucks, rolls, and saves the day. Cletus and Carnage are separated, and Carnage is crawling towards Cletus. Cletus has his hand outreached as he's lying in the debris of the cathedral that just came shattering down. And Venom comes and steps on top of Carnage, picks him up, and eats him, and says he did not taste good. And that one got a little bit of a chuckle out of me, because at that point, I needed it. And then Cletus is sitting there, and they pick. So Venom picks Cletus up, and they do the half mask thing where you can see half of Eddie's face. And Cletus is like, "You weren't listening, Eddie." And he's like, "Well, I'm listening now." And Cletus is like, "I just wanted your friendship." And Eddie's like, "I'm sorry, Cletus." And then it goes back to Venom's full face, and then Venom's like, "F this guy." And then he eats Cletus's head. You see no blood. Screech, as she was falling, had one of the cathedral bells fall on top of her, and it silenced her. Ann and Dan leave. Eddie and Venom go on the run. Now, earlier in the show, Venom said he wanted to feel the wind through his hair and his toes in the sand. Okay. You know, Venom has no hair, but other than that, and that joke gets made later too. So Screech is dead. Chris Perza, yes. So Shriek, like, that's the thing though. It didn't make any sense because, like, she talked about how she had this super powerful mutation and she was getting moved to this new location. That's why she went to Ravencroft. She's getting moved to this new location where others like her are. To my knowledge, though, like, X-Men doesn't belong to Sony. So I don't, like, this could have been them trying to bring in the mutants and whatnot. They did a very piss poor job. Because if I remember correctly, Shriek is not invincible. Her ultrasonic scream can obviously, like, shatter bullets and eardrums and stuff like that, which is what happened to Mulligan when he shot her in the eye. She busted his eardrum because with her screech. But that doesn't make, like, obviously she's not invincible because the bell fell down on top of her, and as far as I am aware, she died. Like, it does, like, the bell falls on her, and that is literally the last, like, we don't even cut back to her. Cletus doesn't talk about her after she's dead. Nothing. None of that happens. Like, this woman that 2/3 of the movie was spent him trying to send her messages and finding her and setting up this whole red wedding. Nothing. Like, she dies. Like, she has a cathedral bell fall on her, and you get nothing from Cletus. It was ridiculous. Oh yeah, Experiment 626 beep, Boop Bop Beep mentioned it. Yeah, she briefly mentions her mutation at the beginning of the movie. And then she dies by getting a bell dropped on her. And Cletus does not react to that at all. So Eddie and Venom are on the run again. The scene from leaving the cathedral. Ann and Dan go to the, like, leave and go to the cop. Like, they come out, and the cops are circling the building and they're looking at all of the debris. And Venom and Eddie go on the run. And then it goes back to Mulligan, who now has Screech's eyes that glowed this blue. Nowhere in any of those scenes does he bite Screech. Does she bite him? She stabs him with a freaking, I don't even know what, like, I couldn't tell if it was like a mortar. Like, I couldn't, like, it almost looked like this weird combination between, like, a mortar slat and a hand rake, like a garden hand rake. It was this really weird look, but she stabs him in the shoulder with it. And then she wraps the chain around his neck, lifts him into the air, and then slams him down onto the pole. And she, like, sticks her thumb in his eye and says, "What's that saying? An eye for an eye?" Okay. And then you just leave Mulligan and you're like, okay, yeah, pretty sure he's gotta be dead. And nope, it goes back to him. His eyes are glowing and he's like, "Monsters." And you're like, what the, like, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that's not how mutation works. Like, she can't just give it to somebody else. You know what I mean? It doesn't, like, it's not Venom. It's not Carnage. It doesn't jump bodies. That's not how it works. So I'm not really sure what to think. Like, was it because she stabbed him in the eye? And, like, I have, like, it doesn't make any sense. I can't help you there. I don't know what they were trying to do with that. And then yeah, so Screech is dead. Carnage was eaten by Venom. Carnage and Venom had all of maybe 5 minutes on screen together. This movie was 90 minutes should be plenty of time to tell a good story. The problem is they tried to tell 4 stories at once, and one of those stories was literally the first Venom movie all over again, and freaking, retconning and resetting up everything. Then they tried to tell like this origin story for Cletus and Screech. They bring in the mutation, but again, like it's interspersed. It's not flushed out at all. There's nothing really there of substance. Then you have, Carnage coming out, and besides this scene here where he throws some helicopters around and makes big explosions, and the hurricane, like he doesn't. Those were his 2 big things, because it's him and Venom are the ones they're fighting, and they bring down the cathedral. It's not Carnage just tearing everything up. So not a lot of screen time between the two. You've gone through 85% of the movie. They get 5 minutes together, and then it's over and done with. And even that fight, like I said, is interspersed with talking about feelings, and how Cletus was wronged, and how, he was a bad boy, but it wasn't really his fault. It's all of this. Really, it's all juxtaposed very bizarrely. And then, of course, you have the Eddie and Venom breakup that makes absolutely no sense. And Venom going to that rave. That rave clip was out of, like, everything was disjointed and didn't make any sense. There was no flow. You felt all 90 minutes of this movie. Like, when I left the theater, I swear to God, I thought it was 10 o'clock. And it wasn't. It was 8 o'clock when I left that theater. It was the longest and the shortest 90-minute movie ever, because it felt more like 3 30-minute movies that were intercut with each other. And there wasn't enough time. There was not enough time, and 90 minutes should be more than enough time. Like I said at the beginning of this, if you really want to see this, just rewatch the first Venom, because that's the third of this movie is redoing and retelling the first Venom movie. And then at the end of this movie, remember how I said that Venom had mentioned he wanted to, because he needed out. He wanted to, he couldn't live like this anymore. He couldn't be caged anymore. He wanted to feel the wind in his hair and the sand between his toes. Well, they're literally on a beach at the end of the movie, and it's Venom's toes in the sand, and then you got Venom coming at Eddie's shoulder, and they're looking at the sunset out across the water. And Venom is like, you have to love people with all their imperfections. He tells Eddie that he loves him. So Venom tells Eddie that he loves him. It was awkward and forced and not Venom at all. And it wasn't Eddie at all. They made Eddie this sad, desperate, pathetic loner again. They made Venom this emotional, hopeless romantic who, there it is right there. He's like hiding from Carnage. He's like, it's a red one. And this is the first time he's seen Carnage. Like, they could have done this at the beginning of the movie, and Venom could have been like, we can't save them. It's a red, like, there's nothing I can do. And Eddie's like, Eddie could have been like, I let you out so that you could save them, so that you could stop this from happening. And Venom is like, there's nothing we can do. That would have been so much, and then there would have been that conflict throughout the film. But that's not there. And then you have this right here, this weird Eddie and Anne romance. Like I said, Anne is literally here to find Chen, to find Mrs. Chen, who Venom is now inside, because Mrs. Chen is like, out, like, being that motherly figure, I guess. So now Venom's inside of Chen when Anne comes to track him down. Anne talks to Venom seductively, and then Venom's like, okay, we can go save Eddie. So they show up, Anne transforms into Venom, and then she bridal carries Eddie as she busts them out of, as Venom possessing Anne busts out of the prison and leaps from rooftop to rooftop, carrying Eddie like he's a bride. I kid, like the Superman carrying, like when Superman scoops up Lois, or when a groom scoops up his bride, any of that stuff. Yeah, that's how she's carrying Eddie out of the police station, because Venom said he's not going to go back to Eddie until he apologizes to him. He wants Eddie to beg. Never mind that Venom almost died because he couldn't find another suitable host. Never mind that Venom is literally like he's like begging Mrs. Chen for chocolate. Never mind that Venom can't be at his full strength, his full potential without Eddie, because, like I said, in the first film, they've already gone through this. Nope. Eddie has to apologize. Eddie has to grovel. Eddie has to beg. And then Eddie is like, without you, I was nothing. I was a loser. Well, they already made you say that in the first, you're not a loser anymore, Eddie. You already found your self-confidence. You already done this dance. Why are we rewatching the first film, but with more feelings and more, it was so bad. So, yeah, the last 10 minutes of the movie is when, these frames right here are within the last probably 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. 5 of them are Carnage and Venom fighting. That's all you get. It's not, I would have loved to let them, if they had let there be Carnage, it would have been so much better. Venom is not Venom is not supposed to be PG-13. There should have been far more destruction, far more blood. They should have interacted with each other much, much sooner in this film. I love Tom Hardy. Not Anna loving Henry Cavill I'm not quite to that level, but pretty dang close. Tom Hardy is one of my favorite actors. If you have watched him in any Taboo, this means, so Taboo, just this grit, he's so good. He's smart, he's clever, he's witty, he's silent, he's capable. This Means War is a romantic comedy. It shows his lighter, funnier, adaptable. He has so much ability. He has so much depth, and they just piss it all away. And it's so frustrating for me because I have been looking forward to this movie for weeks. I got my tickets 3 weeks. The second I could, I bought my tickets. I'm just, and anybody, here's the thing, were those scenes little? Were those scenes small? Not really. They made a big deal out of them. Yeah, those scenes were short, but the movie itself was short because, again, you have 3 to 4 movies shoved into a 90-minute time cycle. So nothing got fleshed out. And so these scenes that could have been really small are actually quite big because they took time out of telling the story to focus on those scenes. And it was extremely frustrating. It was unnecessary. It was disjointed. I vote save your money, watch the first Venom, pirate this sucker. Not really. Don't actually do that. When I say pirate, I mean dress up as a pirate, and play pretend, because this is a PG-13 movie, even though it should be R. Wait for this to come out on video. As much as I wanted this to be good, and as much as I wanted this to smash the box office, and it might still, because is there action? Yes. Is there comedy? Yes. Is it fun? At times, it can be. But it's nowhere near as good as the first Venom. It's nowhere near as good. And the mid-credit scene, basically, Venom and Eddie are laying in a bed. Venom's like, let me show you something. They get teleported somewhere, but they don't know how. I think that has to do with probably Doctor Strange's spell is what I'm going to guesstimate. I don't know. They don't really tell you. The room, like everything vibrates, and then they're in a different hotel room, like a much nicer hotel room. And on the TV, it says Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Like, it's they're unmasking Spider-Man as Peter Parker. And Venom's like, that guy. And that even took me out of the movie because Venom didn't interact with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Venom interacted with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So even the mid-credit scene, didn't get me hyped. It's just, like I said, in one word, disappointing. There's just a lot of the story was unnecessary. There was not really any consistency. I mean, why is Carnage running errands for Cletus? Let's go pick up my girl. Let's go burn our childhood home that was a bad memory. Let's go kidnap these people so they can witness us getting married in an actual Catholic cathedral with an actual Catholic priest, who Carnage then bites the head off of. Considering I had to drive an hour one way because so what actually happened, the projector didn't so much break as I guess the file wasn't transferring correctly. It just wouldn't play, and they didn't know how to fix it, and they couldn't get a hold of tech support. And the manager, she was really nice. She refunded everybody. But yeah, I sat in that theater for an hour and 10 minutes and had only gotten through the previews. If I had to rate this movie, I'd give it a 3.5. Tom Hardy's acting is great. Woody Harrelson's acting, he plays a psychopath very well. The chemistry between them is great. Anne and Dan just make it awkward and throw everything off, and there's no real rhyme or reason for them to be there. They were unnecessary. Carnage and Venom should have met way sooner in this. They should not have tried to retcon and rehash the entire first movie in the first 45 minutes of this film. This first 45 minutes of this film is basically trying to redo Venom 1. Out of how many stars? 3.5 out of 10. Carmen Steele. 3.5 out of 10. I was not impressed in the least. It's not something that I can recommend you go spend. Now, is it better than other things that are in the theater? Perhaps. Cry Macho is something that I'm going to go see this weekend, and I've heard great things about it. Yeah, it's just wait for it to come to streaming services or on physical. It's not really worth your time. I mean, if you want to just burn 90 minutes and not really have anything to show for it at the end, because you're left less satisfied at the end of this film than you are the first one. It's an unnecessary. It's not. It had the potential to be really, really great, and it's not. You can have all the potential in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, it doesn't mean anything. And that's the story of this movie. It's a PG-13. It shouldn't be. Carnage and Venom have no business being a PG-13 movie. Dialogue. It's not even cheesy dialogue. It's choppy dialogue. It doesn't make any sense. There's not near as much banter. It's not as funny. I will give him this. The explosions look pretty sweet. I will say that. But see, right there where he's in front of the window, that's the most color that's in this film. That's something that I meant to bring up as well. It's so dark and muted, and Carnage is supposed to be like a vibrant red. But there's parts when they're fighting, you actually can't tell who's Venom and who's Carnage. Like, you honest to God really can't. I do not recommend. Personally, pass. And I love Tom Hardy. So, like, I want him to be the next Bond. Like, I know everybody's on this Henry Cavill kick for James Bond. I'm really not. Like, I'm not. And I think Tom Hardy would be a great Bond. He's got the depth, he's got the build, he has that cocky debonairness about, like, I'm talking like cocky, confident Bond who lives life fast and loose. I think Tom Hardy is a fantastic actor. It's not just because he's attractive, because he is. Like, you'd have to be dumb not to admit that he's attractive. But he has a lot of talent. And none of that comes through in this movie. None of it. They make him a whiny crybaby loser. He calls himself a loser again. Sorry, I'm just getting back into the same rants. But, yep, long story short, skip the movie. Watch it when it comes out. If you want to go, by all means. But my personal recommendation, I don't know, go see Addams Family 2. I don't know that there's really anything else in theater. Cry Macho, I've heard great things about. Go give that a shot. I would hard pass on this. So but I appreciate all of you being here. George is doing his first live stream. If you want to go check it out, I am going to drop the link here in just a second. I really, really, really appreciate every single one of you being here. I did my best not to do any spoilers in the beginning. I know I rehashed a lot of the same points, but, like, again, the movie is subpar at best. At best. That's the special effects are great. There's, like I said, there's some action, but not near enough. I would change so much about this movie. Yeah, it's not worth it, and it was certainly not worth the it's not worth the, like, it was worth the drive for you guys, but it was not worth what I had to go through. Like, it wasn't worth all of that. Invincia Gaz. So I mentioned it, the coming out part, he literally walks into a rave and says, "I'm out of the Eddie closet." And then he gets up on this DJ stage 5 minutes later after they've cut away and cut back, and now he's got glow necklaces and glow bracelets on. And he's like, "We've got to stop the mistreatment of aliens. We can all share this rock together. Eddie was wrong. I'm here and you all love me." And it's just, like, it was very much forced. Very much forced. 100%. And just not anything that I would recommend. The only thing that I saw 2 trailers. Dune looks phenomenal, and Ghostbusters Afterlife looks phenomenal. Spend your money on those. I'm gonna go ahead and drop George's first live stream link there in the chat. They're live right now. Why don't you guys head on over? They've been live for about an hour or two. And I cannot thank you guys enough for stopping by. Hopefully you guys find a better way to spend 90 minutes. And, just, like, find a way to really enjoy yourselves. Mila, it was bad. Like, they threw some intersectional BS in there. It was super forced. It was unnatural. It was disjointed. But it was overall just bad. There was some action, but not enough. Carnage and Venom were only on screen for about 5 minutes together. And Anne basically bridal carries Eddie out of the prison, out of the police station where he's being questioned. There's some other stuff interspersed in there, like Carnage telling Eddie that he loves him and stuff like that. But they've set it up for a sequel, so I guess we'll see how that goes. Hang on, let me see if anybody dropped anything. Cal G for $2. Thank you, Cal G. All I want to know is Woody Harrelson's version of Cletus is just as crazy or more crazier than the one from Spider-Man animated series. That scene in the cartoon where Cletus says to the symbiote, "I am all yours, man," is one of the best. I agree, that is one of the best. That is not, there's nothing anywhere close to that good in this film. The animated series is way better. They didn't come anywhere close to doing any of these characters any justice. And they undid the entire arc and development from the first movie of Eddie and Venom, like individually and together. So thank you everybody for stopping by. I really appreciate it. If you can, hop over to George's live stream. Support him over there. I greatly appreciate all of the support so much. You're all amazing. I love you dearly. Much love. Have a great night. Bye.